In today's video, we'll be looking at the controversy surrounding free speech in the UK. To start, we have Count Dankula. Count Dankula was until relatively recently an almost unknown YouTuber. Allegedly, before one video made him go viral, he had about 10 subscribers and was generally an unknown on YouTube. I say allegedly because while I have heard of this from other YouTubers, I know nothing about Dank outside of the recent controversy. Now, which video am I talking about? Well, this one.
My girlfriend is always ranting and raving about how cute and adorable her wee dog is, and so I thought I would turn him into the least cute thing that I could think of, which is a Nazi. Buddha, do you want to gas the juice? Do you want to gas the juice? Mom will gas the juice, son.
Ausgekehlt wurde von dem leichten Zeug, das sie einzufinden begann. Heute müssen wir selbst...
Sieg heil! Sieg heil! Sieg heil!
Yes, that's a man trying to train his girlfriend's pug to raise its paw when he says Sieg Heil, or turn to look at him when he says gas the Jews. Though, to be fair, as a dog owner, if you say anything in the right tone of voice, the dog will look at you anyways. It's stated that it's a prank or joke, and the reason for doing it is this is the least cute thing he can think of. Basically, the worst thing he can think of, and thus an insult to Nazis. Personally, I find the video fairly stupid and ridiculous. I don't find it offensive, but then I'm not the target demographic who might. I'm not his girlfriend. However, while I think the video is horrible and in bad taste, I support his ability, if not his right, to post it. Why? Because as a proponent of free speech, I believe everyone should have the right to speak and act without worrying that people will take offense to it. I do support reasonable laws limiting free speech. After all, slander and libel are laws all of us generally accept concerning making false and damaging statements about another person, and we generally don't complain freedom of speech is curtailed when someone commits fraud. However, the law Dankula is charged under is the British Communications Act of 2003. If you find that familiar, it's a law I actually did a video on in episode 2 of my series, Crazy Social Justice Laws. Britain's Communication Act of 2003. This one's a little old, but it's starting to have some very negative effects on the British people. You see, under the Communications Act, section 127, you find the following. The wording of this is very vague. For example, subsection 1 says you can be guilty of an offense if you send someone something that's grossly offensive or of an indecent, obscene, or menacing character. Under this law, you can be charged with a crime simply for offending someone. Yep, if you send messages, make videos, or write blog articles that offend someone, you can be arrested under this act. And if you're one of those people who thought there's no way the British government would arrest people for that, well, Count Dankula is proof. He was arrested, tried, and convicted, awaiting sentencing in April. According to the law, Count Dankula can be facing up to 5 months in jail and or face heavy fines for making a video people found offensive. I think Jordan Peterson summed it up best in his recent interview with Kathy Newman.
You cited freedom of speech in that. Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You know, like you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
Well, I'm very glad I put you on the spot.
Well,
I'm very glad that I have exercised my freedom of speech.
You get my point. It's like you're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on.
So
and that is what you should do. But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine.
In order for people to understand one another, we can't be worried about offending them. We can't legislate against the idea of being offended. Otherwise, all one needs to do to force a state-mandated echo chamber is simply charge anyone you disagree with having offended you. For example, flat earthers could, under this law, were I British, have me arrested for debunking their nonsense. Radical feminists could claim to be offended by my videos and have me charged. But you might say, mad skeptic, this is just one case, it's not a trend. But sadly, it is becoming a trend within the UK. Martin Sellner and Brittany Pettibone were recently detained at Luton Airport and prevented from entering the country, claiming they were a threat to the public good. According to the media, both are part of the so-called alt-right and white supremacists. I am, however, skeptical of these claims, since white supremacy is seemingly tossed out at anyone, left or right, who doesn't hold to really far-left ideologies. While I don't understand the language for Martin's videos, I can understand Brittany's, and she seems to be mostly just holding to fairly standard Republican right-wing views. Lauren Southern, similarly, is a Canadian right-wing commentator, and she too was nabbed, seemingly under Britain's anti-terrorism laws and barred from the UK for similar reasons. In an interview, Lauren even described the shady tactics they used to hold her, claiming British authorities used the anti-terrorism laws as a smokescreen to hold her while they figured out a way of dealing with her.
After the normal border police had questioned me, I got a knock on the door from the Kent UK police, who handed me this form, and that's where things kind of went sideways. It's the Schedule 7 Terrorism Act, and they said, you need to read this. You are being brought in to be questioned under the Terrorism Act. I got asked some bizarre questions in that hour in this tiny, really hot room where I'm sitting there like, oh my goodness, I'm being questioned as a terrorist.
On terrorism? Yeah. What were they asking you?
So they asked me a manner of questions. It started a little less weird. They asked me about my speech that I gave in Belgium for a Flemish nationalist group. Then they asked me to describe my political ideology. How do you feel about right-wing terrorism anyways? So what my legal representation that I spoke to thinks, what a few other people that I've spoken to think, is they actually used Schedule 7 to last minute detain me while they were trying to come up with something to ban me from the country for.
She even appeared before the European Parliament concerning the matter.
It's my pleasure to announce here the presence of Lauren Southern, and the subject of this meeting here is what happened to her in the last few days in the United Kingdom.
There seems to be a real push to label right-wing commentators and celebrities as white supremacists and banning them from speaking whenever possible. Even left-wing speakers are getting caught up in it. Sargon of Akkad is a notable one. A self-identified liberal, even so far as labeling himself a liberalist, he's routinely had his speaking engagements targeted by Antifa, a protest group that generally uses thuggish, if not fascist tactics to protest whom they perceive as fascist. Fascism to stop fascism. Oh boy. Worse, Antifa is often regarded as a terrorist organization for its use of force to intimidate and bully for political change. Recently, they tried to shut down his talk at King's College in London. He's regularly been called alt-right and a white supremacist for having center-of-left views on subjects. He's been banned from Twitter and briefly had his YouTube account and Google account shut down, and had his speaking engagements shut down for fear of protests. It seems the far-left ideologues can only view themselves as being left, and anyone else that holds views they disagree with, by extension, must be right-wing, and by association, white supremacists. Heck, after that Antifa clash I just showed, Sargon was described as being a Nazi, along with the people he was speaking with, despite the fact he was speaking with a Jewish gentleman.
I'm recording this video like this, so you can see the Antifa flag I have hanging up behind me. And you might be thinking, well, why do you have that Antifa flag? And as you can see by the picture on the screen, it's because I took it from them, and I am displaying it as a trophy. Because they decided that a Jewish objectivist, Yaron Brook, head of the Ayn Rand Institute, and myself, an English liberal, and not just a liberal, but a liberalist, are Nazis.
Now, these are just famous examples. This is on top of the fact that every day, 9 people are arrested in the UK for breaching the British Communication Act of 2003. And 3 people are being convicted every day.
It seems that internet trolling in the UK is becoming an increasingly risky pastime. The anti-trolling law is seeing 3 people a day convicted for online bullying. For those that get a jail sentence, on average, they spend a little over 2 months behind bars. But the government announced plans to increase the sentence to 2 years.
More and more, Britain seems to be letting itself slip down this regressive, slippery slope of stifling free speech and trying to curtail wrongthink, forgetting that when you try to censor ideas you dislike, all you really do is drive them underground and grant them legitimacy.
They're putting up all the posters, right? Don't believe in all the 4 posters. Yeah, they didn't last long. I'm still here. I'm still here and I'm still standing up for open discussion.
Why are you defending it? No Nazis! No Nazis! Anyone's fuck! You're for anyone's fuck! No platform for racism! No platform for homophobia! This is our borough! Fuck off!
I don't want people I disagree with silenced. Far from it. Let the radical feminists push their man-hating rhetoric on the world, and I will continue to debunk their nonsense. Let the anti-science morons keep claiming grand yet baseless conspiracies, and I will continue to show them facts and evidence proving them wrong. We counter bad ideas with good ones. If you are a citizen of the UK and want to see positive change, write your government and tell them this shit cannot stand. And hopefully one day, a man need not go to jail for an offensive prank. That's it for me. If you enjoyed this video, remember to mash that like and subscribe button. If you enjoy this content or have requests for future videos, leave a comment or send me a message. If you want to be kept up to date on when I post videos, feel free to follow me on Facebook and Twitter. And as always, I will see you next time.